What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Marriage and Medicine. On today's video, we would like to talk about kind of the before and after of match day. So for those of you that do not know, we did a video on it a little while back, but match day is during fourth year medical school where you ultimately find out where you'll be doing residency. So it's definitely a big day altogether. But in doing so, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety about where you're going to end up because that definitely is going to be a big part of your future altogether.
So once you've turned in your official match day
Rank list.
Yeah, thank you. Once you turn that in, you have about a month-ish until match day, and so you kind of are just waiting to see what's going to happen.
It's a long wait too.
Yeah,
time goes slow.
So there's not really like a whole lot you can do while you're waiting, unfortunately. You just kind of have to wait and see. You find out that week, at least, you find out the Monday of match day if you matched or not. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, you can kind of like, okay, relax. But trying to prepare for that day is a little hard because it's just a little tough to do. So one thing that we did, we tried to think of like our top 3 places and like plan what our life could look like if we matched there. And I mean, we kind of did with all of them in general, but mainly the top however many out of your list, I would say to do that. You can match anywhere though, so you just kind of need to prepare yourself for where you may end up being. But we looked at the top 3 and kind of were just like, okay, if we end up in Florida, like, am I gonna work or not? Like, what's the cost of living gonna be like there? Are we gonna rent or not? Are we gonna buy a house? And so we kind of had those same questions for like every place that we had, just to kind of get an idea of like, okay, if on match day we open that letter and it's matched at this place, at least we kind of have a general idea of what we might want to do. And it can change, but I feel like that kind of helped somewhat get the ball rolling so that once match day did come, it wasn't like, okay, well now what are we going to do? Are we going to rent a house? Are we going to work? Are we going to do this? Like, it at least gave us somewhere to start at. So I would say to do that, look through all of your places that you put on your rank list. If not all of them, at least the top half maybe, just to kind of give yourselves like an idea of what life might look like after you go to residency.
So one thing you also want to think about is when it comes time to make your rank list, make sure that the places that you rank on there is somewhere that you can see yourself. If you go and do an interview, you go there and you see the city and all that kind of stuff, and you are just like absolutely miserable for whatever reason, it may be best to not rank that place because there is always a chance that that might end up being the place that you end up at. Even if you rank it last, I mean, there's still a possibility. So just make sure that you kind of weigh the pros and cons of that kind of situation.
Something else you could do while you're waiting is start looking at places in these locations that you might end up at. So if you're going to rent, start looking at apartments or whatever it is that you're wanting to rent. If you're going to buy, start looking at the market and see what houses might be available for sale. We did that a lot, especially in our top like 3 cities that we really wanted to be in, just so we could get an idea of like how much stuff was going to cost, so that we weren't surprised if we did end up in one of those areas. And then again, for us, something we were considering a lot was like if I was going to continue working or not. So we knew that if we ended up somewhere where it was like a lower cost of living, like where we were for medical school was very low cost of living, or if it was somewhere it was like medium here, doable, we were like, oh, you know, probably won't need to work, you don't have to worry about that. But if it was somewhere like high cost of living like Miami or New York or California, I'm just any place like that, we knew there was just no possible way I was going to have to work. So if you're someone, one of you is considering that as like a choice, that might be something you want to think about as you look through your rank list and kind of weigh out, am I going to have to work if we go to this place, or can we get by without it?
Yeah. And during this time, it's really just all hypothetical. You're just playing out a lot of different scenarios in your head. And honestly, you're going to have a lot of time to do so because fourth year medical school, most of the time, this is kind of almost a dead period in a sense where you're not really doing anything that's that you have to do kind of thing. It's kind of where you're just kind of coasting through match day, coasting to graduation. So you'll have usually a lot of time to kind of think about these different things. But again, don't fixate on one particular scenario and just be like, that's the way we have to go. If we don't get matched there, we're going to be miserable. Weigh out the different options, because again, you can end up anywhere on that rank list. So the day finally comes, you get that letter, you find out where you match. A lot of excitement. You're all excited.
Hopefully.
Sure. Hopefully. I mean, there's a lot of excitement during that week that builds up to that moment. And ideally, when you look at it, you like what you see.
Yeah.
Some people may not as much, but you hope you match. So after you get that letter, usually later that day, the next day, sometime that next week, you'll end up getting either a letter or email, text message, something of that nature from your program director or somebody from the residency program that you matched at. And in that, sometimes they can give some contact information, whether it is the current residents that are there now or other individuals that are at that location. And one thing that is always very beneficial is reaching out to them regarding the housing situation, as well as that can give you a lot of ideas of what's available. Sometimes you'll get some residents who are leaving and they were renting a place, or they bought a house and want to rent it out. I mean, those are easy connections, easy ways to get a good deal sometimes, and other good ways to just kind of have a nice location to live. And most of the time, a lot of these people like to live close to the hospital, so it can be a good spot altogether.
If possible, try to, it might be hard for this year's match, but like if your match day is coming up next year, try to set aside time off after match day so that you can both go and look, like if you are moving, that you guys could both go together and see your new area. That was something, thankfully, my spring break was like a month after match day, so I already knew I had a week coming up that I was going to be off. And I think it lined up great with his schedule that he was able to be away during that time too. So we had took that week of spring break, went to our new state, and just kind of like looked around. I mean, thankfully he was already there for a month for an away rotation, so he already knew a lot. But it was my first time actually getting to go. So we spent that week kind of just looking around, checking out stuff. And that was the week that we also had like places in mind that we were looking at renting from. And so we did a lot of like tours and basically tried to lock down a place during that week, because I didn't want to have to rely on doing that online. So if you can, try to go physically in person to these places so that you can get a better idea of what your living situation might look like. And then you can also just kind of see like what's there to do out there, like restaurants. You might be able to meet some of the people in the program, or some of the current residents that are still going to be there when you come the following summer. So it's just a good chance, or a good
opportunity to do some things. Get a chance to kind of feel what it's going to be like as a resident in that location. And for your spouse, being able to see like what they have to look forward to as well, and what you guys can do when you have a little bit of free time when you're there.
And thankfully, since once we got our match, I knew that, okay, I didn't have to work at this location anymore. So for me, I didn't have to worry about going through licensing and all of that stuff. So as far as my job transition, it was very easy because I wasn't going to a job. But if you are someone who is going to work and continue to work, I would try to start as soon as possible. That was one thing I had already communicated to my principal, like, I think at the beginning of the school year. I was like, look, we have match day coming up in March. I know it's a ways away, but I'm just letting you know match day is like when TJ finds out where he matches, and we might not be staying here after this school year. So she already knew. I had already like had the days off planned and everything. And that same day, like she emailed and was like, oh, where'd you guys end up at? And so I told her like, sorry, I'm going to be moving after this school year. So that was something I had kind of already prepared her for in advance. But if you haven't talked to your boss already about that, I would let them know as soon as possible in person, not over email, and start looking for your new job and your new place as soon as possible, just so that hopefully you'll be able to start that job once you do move and get settled in.
And another thing, now that you know where you're going to be, you now know also what your salary is going to be. So you can take that time to look on the website for the program and get an idea of how much money you're going to be making, mainly so that you can budget when it comes to actually finding a place and things of that nature. You definitely don't want to go looking blindly and just be like, oh, I think we can probably afford this. Think about it, write it down, get an idea of what you're actually going to be able to afford. The worst possible thing is getting into residency and just feeling broke and not being able to afford things. So definitely important from that standpoint.
And with that, like regardless if you buy or rent, like they're going to ask you for your income anyway. And usually your program doesn't mind like writing you a letter to tell the whoever, like this is what he's going to make. So that's like he was saying, don't just pick something like, yeah, I think we can afford this. Like they're going to get the letter saying what your income is and what it, so don't just pick something blindly. Like that's going to be seen anyway. So you might as well pick something that you can actually afford and that's going to be beneficial for you. Also with moving, you have to think about how far are you moving if you do have to move at all. For us, it was about I think 5-hour-ish drive.
Not too bad.
So we just got a U-Haul, packed it up, and thankfully our family helped us out, but someone drove the U-Haul, we drove our cars, and we just took the drive basically here. But if you're like having to go cross country, I don't know, you might have to hire movers to drive for you. You might have to fly some. Like there's just a lot of things to factor in. So I would say, depending on what your situation is, try to look at the cost of all of the different ways that you can go and try to pick the one that's the least expensive, because you don't want to spend a whole lot of money moving, especially in medical school when you're not making any money as it is. Some programs do also give you like a moving budget too. So wherever you're going might say like, hey, we're going to give you X amount of money for your moving. And then you're going to have to save like your receipts for gas and like receipts for like all kinds of stuff. So that can be helpful. But again, that's not something you're going to get right at the beginning. That will be something that you're going to get after you've already started residency. So you want to try to pick the most cost-effective way to get to your new place.
So in closing, I mean, this is very exciting time all together. So you definitely want to enjoy the moment. Again, you're going to be anxious about it, but ultimately everything is going to work out in the end. So kind of just take some of these things into account when you're navigating through this period of life.
The worst case scenario, if you're like just struggling or not sure what to do, like reach out to people that have done it. Reach out to friends you have that just had their match the year before you, or reach out to anyone that you know that's in the medical field. You could reach out to us, but there are people that would help you with questions or just like venting, whatever it is that you need after your match day. So don't feel like you're completely just on your own and have to figure everything out. There are resources out there for you.
That's it. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see y'all in the next video.